Who will come out on top? Fight! Who will come out on top? Fight!
Hi, my name is Warren, and welcome to the VOD. This is supposed to come out forever ago, but like I accepted this VOD like a couple weeks before I moved into college, so that kind of stopped me from doing it for a bit. And I had to like get used to college and find out my schedule was like, and like make time to work on this. I've been working on this slowly but surely. So again, I apologize for everyone that kind of like expected this to come out a lot sooner than it was, supposed to. Or it was supposed to come out sooner, but, kind of fucked around. But it's here now, so I'm glad you guys are here, and I hope you guys can learn something from this. Alright. Okay. To start off, the first thing I noticed was your camera work. It was very stagnant a lot of the time, especially towards the end of the animation. Most of the time before that, the characters being hit by attacks aren't really moving a whole lot, which kind of makes the problem of your camera not moving more apparent. It gets really bad when you decide to have the camera cut to show someone falling down. I think your camera work is just trying to capture everything happening all at once, unless it involves someone being knocked off screen, then it focuses on them. My way of making the camera seem more engaging is having the camera follow either a specific body part in a fight or a specific person and all of their movements. The best examples of this are 19 through 26 seconds and 32 through 40 seconds in my version of your animation. With the second example, Jason and Kazuya were kicking each other's legs, so I made the camera focus entirely on their legs' movements. I zoomed in really close so that you could only see the lower half of their bodies. The first example is a bit more complicated. I initially had the camera follow Kazuya when he backhanded Jason and uppercut him. Then the camera followed Kazuya turning around and hitting Jason. Then Kazuya crouches, lunges, and swings his arm up into Jason's stomach. The camera at that moment shifts its focus from all of Kazuya to just his arm and his fist, and follows his fist until it hits Jason. This creates the arc-like movement you see the camera doing at that part. Everything after that is pretty much the same thing. The axe kick after the uppercut is a good example of me focusing on a specific body part as well. Another thing, your camera felt a little too zoomed out for a good portion of the animation. 14 through 18 seconds is a good example of this. Because this is a fight scene, I would figure that the main attraction would be the guys hitting each other, and I would want to see as much of that as I could. So I zoomed the camera in more. You, on the other hand, Jose, leave the camera zoomed out a whole lot and it detracts from the fight. In my version of your animation, around 14 through 18 seconds, the camera is zoomed in a lot more. This makes the fight the main focus rather than the fight just seeming like something that's just happening in the scene. You kinda had it in 31 through 33 seconds, but then you didn't really commit to doing it throughout the entire animation. But if you had the camera work like that more often, it would really make your fight seem a lot more engaging. Moving on from the camera work, I'm going to cover the choreography in this animation. The choreography for the fight in this animation, I thought it was pretty well thought out. It seemed like it was thought out. There were blocks, dodges, and parries. It wasn't just two guys taking turns, beating each other up while the other one just eats it. However, the execution was pretty lacking. The two things that held back the choreography were the lack of weight and the long pauses in between the fighting. I'm going to explain the first problem, though. As stated before, when you have people get hit, they don't move very much. The attacks besides the one that knocked people off screen or the one from Jason that ended the fight didn't have much weight or build up to them. This problem is more general and spread throughout the entire animation, so there wouldn't be much point in pointing out specific times where this occurred. When I animated attacks in my version of your animation, I made sure each attack felt different and that attacks that were quick and snappy looked and felt like that. I did the same thing for attacks that looked really powerful. When I animate attacks that are powerful, I put some delay before the move comes out. It's slow to wind up, but quick once it actually happens. For bigger attacks, I usually double, triple, or however many frames I need to make something look slower and choppier to give it that initial delay, and then once I get to the part of the attack where they're actually throwing out a move, I make it quick by having very few frames of them throwing a punch or kick. The difference for quick attacks is that they all just have less build-up. However, in your animation, all of the attacks looked quick and they all lacked build-up. The second problem that held back your choreography were just those really long pauses after someone got knocked off screen or fell down during the fight, like 34 through 36 seconds in your animation. This happened a couple of times throughout the animation and it takes away from the fighting because it was generally really fast-paced and all of a sudden just kind of stops abruptly. I replicate these pauses in my animation. However, I have the characters hit the ground and slide and have the camera follow them. You just had them hit the ground and bounce while the camera stood absolutely still. You need to find a way to make something like that seem more interesting and engaging for the viewer. Another thing, your transitions between poses for the characters were really rough. It really felt like you were just kind of swapping symbols for their attacks and just playing them one after another instead of the characters throwing out multiple attacks. I say this because when we animated the characters fighting, you didn't really pay much attention to how their bodies were before they made their next move. For example, for 19 seconds and 27 seconds, both Kazuya and Jason's feet were just sliding all over the floor. It's friction that would stop their feet from doing that. The characters being able to twist and turn their bodies in space however they want without the ground they're standing on having any effect on them makes the fight seem less realistic. In my version of your animation, from 19 seconds to 31 seconds, Kazuya takes steps in order to continue his attacks on Jason. His feet don't just slide all over the place. I pay attention to what his body was doing beforehand, and I pick out poses that when played one after another create a logical movement for his body to make. Why bother having the ground there if the characters aren't really interacting with it? When the characters are moving between poses, pay attention to what their body parts were doing beforehand to create movements that make sense visually and sequentially. Each frame should play into another and tell a clear visual story. Now I'm going to touch on the fourth thing that kind of held back your animation, and that is sounds. When it came to sounds in the animation, I thought most of the things you put down were passable. I think you just left a lot of things without sound. For example, whenever the camera cut to show someone hitting the floor, there's no sound for when someone connected with it. In addition to that, when Jason and Kazuya collided at 30 seconds, the sound that was placed there was way too quiet. Where at 51 seconds, when Jason trips Kazuya and picks him up and throws him, there was no sound for Kazuya hitting the floor or him being thrown into the air. When it came to people being hit by other people, you were consistent when laying out sounds, but other than that, you just stopped putting in sound effects. A fight animation is more than just the sound of two people hitting each other. Lay out sounds for everything that should and would make a sound. So, ultimately, in conclusion, I think this animation was okay. The thought you put into the characters' choreography and movements really showed, and that made the fight a lot more enjoyable to watch. However, you put so much attention into animating the characters, you didn't put that much attention into everything else. The lack of understanding of physics, general lack of effects, and lackluster use of sounds held back this animation a whole lot. You did a lot in this animation right, Jose, and I can tell what your focus is, but try and think bigger. Don't just make the fight good next time. Make sure there are appropriate effects and sounds to accompany it. Try having the fight take place in a background where the characters can interact with stuff. Like a forest, they can hit each other with trees or swing from vines or something. Just don't only focus on the idea of two people hitting each other. Fights can be a lot more interesting than that, and I think you can make good on that. Anyway, I think that's about it. That's all I've got. Bye. Sans.